everybody. Welcome to Life Stories Podcast, People Helping People. I'm Shara Goswick, your host. My guest today is Michael Klassen, who is the host of the 5 a.m. podcast. Michael said he loves talking to people and hearing their stories of victory, stories of overcoming, people who have walked through hard things and have come through on the other side and are now sharing their story about their journey. I love talking to other podcast hosts because I always wonder if people love it as much as I do, if they like the same things about it that I do. We had a lot in common, and Michael has a great podcast. I've listened to a few episodes. I continue to do more, and I encourage you to check it out and do the same thing. Thanks for being here. I will have to say when I started reading through your stuff, like I read through a portion of it initially when I reached out to you. And then when I really started reading, I thought, uh-oh, I asked somebody to be on my podcast who's way more professional than I am.
Oh, that's very kind of you. I'll take that compliment. Thank you.
Yes. Well, you do have an extensive background in video production and all these things. And
Yeah,
so I was like, well, okay, that's okay.
absolutely. I
So
love it.
I love the premise of your podcast, the 5 a.m. podcast, because I'm a morning person and I love how you're trying to help people get their day started off right. And,
hmm
you have all the positive things that you're doing. Why did you ever, I know initially it started as a blog, but why did you
Correct.
ever decide to start doing this?
Well, it goes back a long way. As a young boy, and I was trying to find who I was and to emulate somebody, and quite young, in Sunday school, I heard about this guy in the Bible named Barnabas, who was the son of encouragement, and I thought, boy, I could do that. I could encourage people.
Yeah,
And I wasn't aware of all my skills and assets at the time, being the age that I was, but I was like, I could encourage people.
that's
And
awesome.
so I had friends that were enemies with other people. So like Brent couldn't come to my birthday party because Jason was going to be
Right.
there, that kind of thing. And I was kind of that, I wormed my way in between, I think my wife has referred to me as a bit of a chameleon because I can fit in with a lot of different types of
Yeah.
people and groups.
That's great. That's a
Yeah.
great asset to have. I will tell you on the episode that aired today, that's exactly what I said about myself. I want to be known
Mm,
as an encourager. That's
yes.
what I want to be known. So I appreciate that. I think that's
Yeah.
great. So why did you go? You started as a blog and then did you just
Mhm.
jump on the podcast train like everybody, or did you see a benefit to switching
Oh,
to that?
I was definitely an early adopter of podcasts.
Yeah.
So I was working oftentimes by myself. So I had my earbuds in and I was listening to podcasts, throughout my workday.
Yeah.
And I thought I can do this. I need to do this. But back in 2018 and 2019, the plan always was to bring in the audio visual side of it. It's just both of us were too busy with the tasks already at
Right.
hand. And it wasn't until my position was terminated back at the end of October,
Mm,
surprisingly,
yeah.
of 24. And so then my wife and I just decided, well, we've got 5ampodcast.com and we've got all our stuff on there. Now we just have the opportunity to do the audio visual version of what
Sure.
we've been trying to do. And Susan had suggested to me that I needed to get on Podmatch.
Hmm.
And yeah, the rest is his history. So
That's awesome. Are you enjoying it? Are you
I
enjoying
love
that
it.
part of it now?
Yeah,
Me too. Me
100%.
too. Yes,
So much fun.
absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to read this part because it's a long-winded sentence, but
Okay.
I want to ask you about it.
Okay.
So you help people who are getting up early, early risers, cultivate gratitude and develop an abundance mindset. Why is it so important for people, do you think, to get in the right mindset when they start off their day?
Yes. Well, I would say those morning times are foundational. They're kind of like the time where we either build on what's already been built in the previous days in the week or the month, or we're
Yeah.
building our foundation just for the day. And so, man, there's so many things. Like you can listen to like just so much information that comes to us and on the various screens that we have in the
Right.
house. And so we have to learn how to have those blinders on to say that if it's not positive and uplifting, and if it's not filling my mind with gratitude, pardon me, and gracious thoughts, and then abundant thoughts, I need to be able to compartmentalize those thoughts that don't fit with what I want to build the foundation for my day out of.
Yeah.
And it's the word no, it kind of gets vilified.
Yeah.
And we hear that like in improv and other places, they'll say yes and, or like the Jim Carrey movie where he had to say yes to everything.
Right.
Great movie, but bad example for
Right.
life because
It
we
is.
when we were growing up, I was one of five children, and
Mhm.
my parents were vigilant on who we brought home to be friends with.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always fun, but those friends are like our ideas.
Yeah.
And so then we have to guard our hearts and minds so that we're
Mhm.
thinking about those positive things,
Right.
which means then we kind of have to say no to conversations or people or stop hanging out at the water cooler because it's just way too much negativity.
Right. That's so true. And you really have to be purposeful with that
Hmm.
because that's all right. And I believe in all of that, but it is very easy to sit with your, or at least it is for me, to sit
Uh-huh.
with my phone
Me
in my
too.
hand and just scroll through Instagram, scroll through
Yes.
the reels or whatever. So it's so easy to do that. But you have to
Hmm.
be purposeful in that. It's very
Yeah.
important to do that.
Yeah.
For somebody that is starting their personal development journey, they want to make changes. What is something that they could do? One small thing that they could do to start off their morning better.
Yes. Read one chapter in the book of Proverbs that's found
That'll
in the
do it.
Bible. Because
That'll do it.
there's 28 to 31 days in the month, and
Yeah.
there's 31 chapters in Proverbs.
Yeah.
That's the gold mine,
Yeah.
really,
That's
for
a good one.
positive thought. Yeah.
Yeah. That is a good one. What about people that say, well, I'm just not a morning person. I don't like getting up early
Oh,
and doing
well,
things early.
yeah, that could be, I'm 325 pounds. I'm just an eater of food. It's just what I do. I just eat food. Or it's like, I'm not a morning person. Well, you could be a morning person.
Yeah.
The thing about waking up early is you realize when it's like, let's say 9 o'clock or 9:30 at night, what time do I want to get up in the morning?
Right.
And what am I actually doing between 9 and midnight
Yeah.
that I could actually do between 5 and 7 or
Right.
something like that? And
Yeah.
personally, for me, I love it when I see 10:30 on the clock and think, man, I've been up for, 4 or 5 hours and I've gotten a lot done.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I am a morning person, so I don't have sympathy for people that say they
right.
can't get up and do it.
It
What are
is.
some common myths about productivity and getting up early that you debunk on your show?
Hmm. I haven't really put those two things together specifically,
Yeah.
but the big thing about productivity is knowing how there's that plan of make the plan, work the plan, something
Yeah.
like that, and you make the schedule, work the schedule. And I often think of JD Rockefeller had 100-year plan for every dollar that his company made. So
Wow.
that dollar couldn't be spent somewhere else, like on ice cream for the staff
You're right.
or parts for something, because it had 100-year plan, and we're going to use this dollar for these things. And
Wow.
that's the same way for our time is, at nighttime, in where we're contemplating that we're going to get up in the morning. One of the things that I really try and be firm on is I don't use my like after 8 o'clock hours for anything having to do with work.
Yeah.
No conversations, nothing like that. And that way I know that these hours that are coming up they're not intended to discuss work or plan my day. I should have been doing that before. And
Right.
my parents would always say you got to do the hard work first, then you can relax.
That's
And
right.
so it's compartmentalizing our day just like we compartmentalize our thoughts.
Yeah, that's very good. Tell people who are not familiar with your show, tell people what kind of topics you cover.
Well, we like to tell stories, and we
Hmm.
like to tell stories of triumph, of overcoming, or people working through their obstacles, or when the light went on that, oh, the obstacle's not in my way, it is my way, and
Yeah.
how strength comes from adversity. And
Hmm.
those are the things we like to talk about. I mean, I love Jesus and the Lord and all of that. I
Yeah.
don't really care for a lot of theology, so I'm
Right.
never going to discuss theology and stuff. I want to hear like people's stories of how they triumphed in something, or
Yeah.
they thought the last chapter in the book had been written, but they realized there was another 300 pages that they could fill in.
Yeah.
and those kinds of things.
That's awesome. I love that. You talk about the four friends of success: vision,
Mm,
persistence, resilience, and wisdom. Can you kind of
yeah.
talk about how those make people successful?
Yes. So they kind of, I see them as walking together because we walk in the same direction as our friends. And
Hmm.
if you're walking, I don't know, you're let's say you're at Times Square and you're walking west and you're in a crosswalk. But then you see four people that you went to high school with or that you went to college with. And all those four people are like, "Hey, why don't you come with us? We're going this way. We're going to get some drinks and some dinner and it's going to be fun and maybe some jazz later in the evening." But the reason you're walking west is because you have like purpose and intention. But you get into the situation where you have to be resilient to follow through on your path to
Right.
go west. You need that patience, you need that wisdom to say no. And yeah, sorry, the other two friends escaped me, but it's those qualities that we develop and use as a foundation not only for our day but our life
Yeah.
enables us to have the strength to say no to things that are going to take us off of our path, and that's why we need the resilience and that's why we need the wisdom.
How do you feel like your spirituality is just a foundation of your success and all that you've done?
Well, it's certainly the anchor to my
Hmm.
soul and spirit because we are body, soul, and spirit,
Right.
and the opportunity that we have to live out our beliefs is just such an integral part of what we do. And I hope I'm answering your question with that, but
Yes.
just knowing that in Christ we live and move and have our breathing.
Hmm.
So other people still, they live and move and have their breathing. It's just not through the same source. And
Yeah.
hopefully by telling people stories, it plants some seeds or waters some seeds, and people
Sure.
understand that they don't have to stumble around in darkness, that they can
Yeah.
have this one light source in their life.
Yeah, that's good. I know that your platform includes guest writers and
Hmm.
contributors. How do you decide who you choose for that?
Oh, that's a good question. There's only been a few times where we've had guest writers come on
Hmm.
and share, and they've usually been guests that we've had on 5 a.m. podcast.
Yeah.
And so we liked what we talked about in the conversation.
Hmm.
And so then we said, "Hey, would you like to share one of your articles and
Yeah.
talk about your book or something else, your devotional book, and just share that with our listeners, our readers?" And
Hmm.
so we see that as the rising tide raises all boats, and so we
Right.
can have the opportunity just to work hand in hand with other like-minded people.
Yeah. Well, what about your guests? Like, how do you choose who you're going to have on your show for your guests for the
Oh,
podcast?
yeah, they've got to have a good story.
Yeah.
And it's got to be a story of triumph or of not in every case because we've had a couple of finance economics guys
Yeah.
on like Jonathan Newman and Dr. Sabrin from the Mises Institute, and
Yeah.
it's because I love economics and finance and things like that. It's
Yeah.
always been an interest of mine, and so I
Yeah.
love being able to talk with people who kind of agree with my mindset on
Yeah.
finances and economics. But for the most part, we want to have someone who's got a story to tell and something
Yeah.
that's going to be engaging for the viewers. Um, and then we also look at our demographics, and they can kind of fluctuate. And so we see that as we're adding on younger age groups, or maybe we're getting a higher percentage of females than males, which we that fluctuates too at
Yeah.
times. And so then we just want to be cognizant that it's going to be a topic that I'm comfortable discussing.
Right.
You know, I don't want to talk about ladies in premenopause or menopause or pregnancy stuff, things
Oh,
like
come
that.
on.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that's not the responsibility of a man,
No, it's
or
not.
that's not the place for a man to facilitate a conversation like that.
Yeah.
And, I guess the Hutterites and some of those uh, older Christian groups, where the men would minister to the men and women would minister to
Right.
women. There's a lot of wisdom in that, and
Yes.
that's actually really a good way to go.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, we've got to draw the line in some places, and it's some
Yeah.
things are appropriate and some things just are not.
I totally agree with all of that
Yeah.
completely. So, in all the stories that you've had so far, which one, or is there one that really just stands out to you that you loved getting to hear?
Oh, yes. There's absolutely I won't say a top three, but a favorite three. And
Yeah.
one was Jim Tracy, who
Uh-huh.
doesn't live that far away from me. He's
Oh,
over
wow.
down in Idaho. Um, and so he was just a successful businessman, and we had a great talk about how his company started in his garage, and so there's Jim Tracy for sure.
Mhm.
But then there's Paul Trommel, who was a musician, kind of an alcoholic, drugged out guy in Florida that realized he had to change his life,
Wow.
and made kind of his own program to deal with his addiction, and he now lives in a sailboat in
Oh,
Panama,
wow.
and and gets to sail around the Caribbean and sailed up the coast, the eastern seaboard up to Newfoundland, and
Wow.
so that was a phenomenal story. I loved that one, and
Yeah.
then of course Tom Barrett, who was a former accountant, consultant, computer programmer guy that he's become an adventurer. And so
Yeah.
he had some great stories of being out in nature.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, so many wonderful people that I've met,
Yes.
and so many more just personal accounts of triumph.
Sure.
And Desiree Taylor was another guest that we had, who is hearing impaired. And
Mm.
um, man, so just getting into some of her wow, really tough
Yeah.
circumstances in life, and how she came through that with her faith in Jesus Christ. Really, yeah. For those that are listening, if you think you have problems, you're in great company.
Right, right, absolutely. Have
Yeah,
you found that um, listening to the people's stories that there are people suffering in ways that you had never even imagined or never even
absolutely.
thought of? I have
Hmm.
too. I'm
Yeah,
just that my eyes have been opened to so much
yeah.
since I've started meeting people. But man, what a blessing you have to be
Oh,
able to
yes.
encourage others through their story.
Hmm.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
What do you have? Do you have any new plans or anything coming up for the podcast? You're just going to keep doing what you're doing, which is awesome.
Yes. Well, so when we started 5ampodcast.com, we had a SMART goal worksheet because I found when I was younger that I really needed let's say the bridle or the blinders
Yeah.
of setting goals. And that was one of the things that we had to do in our elementary school, was set goals and our intentions. Kind of, they didn't call
Yeah.
them intentions, but
Yeah.
so we've actually changed our single one sheet, our SMART goal worksheet. It's coming out as a booklet, a workbook, coil
Oh,
bound
wow.
kind of booklet. So we're working on that in between everything else we have to do. And I have to be a little more intentional because it's
Yeah.
only about 30 pages. I still have 70 pages to go, but
Oh, gosh.
uh, and there's coloring pages in there. There's work planner, meal planner pages in there, those kinds of things. And the reason that we wanted to make it 90 to 100 pages was because we want it to be a destination on people's journeys to
Yeah.
their purpose, so that they can go back to that. Maybe they don't feel like working on it, but there's a coloring page in there. So they could, open the book up,
Sure.
do a little coloring, do a Sudoku puzzle or some other things like that. And
Yeah.
so we're working on that. We've got a few other irons in the fire, that just to add some value to people.
Yeah. That is so helpful. That's so helpful because sometimes I'm not a great goal setter. So I need
Hmm.
stuff like that. I need something that someone, can create and kind of guide me
Yeah.
because I'm not a
Yeah.
natural goal setter. I
Right.
need to be. I should be.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that we've incorporated into the book, like because we turned one page into 30, so far. So one of the things that we have in there is, what are your celebrations going to be? What are your milestones going to be? When
Oh,
can you
yeah.
celebrate when you've done these things? And then accountability partners, other people that you could ask to be an accountability partner. And eventually we'd like to have a Facebook group of
Yeah.
people that buy the workbook, so that they can be part of a community that will celebrate your wins and help you through your losses.
That is a great idea. That's a great
Hmm.
idea. They can
Thanks.
encourage one another.
Hmm.
Well, is there
Yeah.
anything I have not asked you about your show that you want to tell me?
That big thing is what does our calendar look like?
Yeah.
And what is our let's say our 10 or 15 hour awake calendar look like versus the week and the month? And just knowing that when we're overwhelmed, if we can learn to compartmentalize things and triage, used to teach first aid and wilderness first aid,
Oh,
and
wow.
we would teach about triage, and the different
Mhm.
colors mean different things, and there's certain things that need to be worked on immediately. And
Yeah.
in this case, no one's going to die. Thankfully, they're not having life-threatening issues.
Right.
But if we look in terms of our time of what we have to do right now,
Sure.
what's going to take 10 minutes? Let's knock that off our list first. What's going to take a couple of hours? Okay, let's
Yeah.
knock that off second. You know, and then setting our intentions and schedules for the day and the week and the month.
Yeah, absolutely. Do people apply to be on your show or do you look for guests? How does that work?
I don't really look for any guests really.
Okay.
I look to see who reaches out to me on Podmatch, and then I work
Okay.
with a really delightful publicist that
Oh,
I've worked
awesome.
with through my career,
Okay.
and I absolutely stay away from political stuff.
Yes, me too.
That some of that stuff will get worked in, but it's so divisive, and they tell us to pick a color and a side, and no one
Yeah.
says that realizes the wings are on the same bird, and they
Right.
just want to
Right.
separate us. So
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just great to see the people that come, and we can find out what their stories are and who they are,
Right.
and see if they're a good fit for 5 a.m. podcast listeners.
Yeah. Isn't Podmatch awesome? I just
It
love
is
it so
totally.
much.
Yes.
I just celebrated it. It's been 1 year since I've started, and
Oh,
I am
nice.
just so thankful for that company. I mean, it has helped
Mm-hmm.
me tremendously, and it's made
Yes.
the process so much easier
Yes,
in
so
getting
much
people for
easier.
the show.
Yeah, it's
Well,
such a
Michael,
blessing.
I appreciate you so much being a guest. Thank you for being patient with my rabbit trails.
Oh no, it's great.
Talking all over the place. I think your show's great. I love
Thank you.
your premise. I love I've listened to a couple episodes, but I've kind of scrolled through and looking, and I think you've got some great stories in there, some
Thank you.
really powerful stories. Right,
Thank you
you
for having
too.
me on. All right.
Absolutely. I'll be in
Okay.
touch.
Thank
Okay.
you. Talk to you
Bye-bye.
later.